Hello and welcome to the Wednesday meeting of the Fraternal Order of Sequestered Mystics. I am your Grand Poobah, and we're here to read another chapter, or part of a chapter. This is chapter 7, part 2 of My Life with the Spirits. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're all connected up and got cozy. I've got my mountain tea here from my mug that Geraldine gave me from Atlantis Bookstore in London. And now I could easily be reading this also on my Kindle because My Life with the Spirit is also on Kindle. But I like the feel and the smell of a book. So here we go, if you're ready. We read part 1 of chapter 7 yesterday. Constance left Nebraska and came to live with me on June 15th. Gee, that's my anniversary. I got to remember that. June 15th, 1967. The sweet distractions of our honeymoon prevented us from accompanying my brother Mark and a nice young Quaker couple named Carl and Elsa to a peace demonstration on June 23rd in Los Angeles. This event would have a profound effect upon Mark and change all our lives dramatically. President Johnson was to appear at the Century Plaza Hotel in Los Angeles. It was the perfect opportunity for the Southern California peace movement to mobilize the most massive demonstration to date against the continuing escalation of the war in Vietnam. The movement on the West Coast was made up primarily of young white adult students, teachers, and clergy, and liberal professionals of the JFK-RFK ilk. The day started with a festive love-in atmosphere that characterized earlier LA demonstrations. The crowd was composed of well-dressed young couples pushing baby carriages and spectacled college types in blue work shirts and corduroy jackets. Before sunset, these dilettantes would become violently committed political radicals. Everyone expected the scenario to follow that of the previous demonstrations. The demonstrators would position themselves in front of the hotel and chant as long and as loud as possible for the benefit of the television news crews. The police would eventually give the order to disperse, and everyone would boo and hiss for a few minutes and then return to their cars feeling defiantly self-satisfied. This day would be different. 2 lines of riot-equipped officers sandwiched the entire assembly in front of the hotel. When the order came to disperse, the demonstrators were prevented from moving by the line of officers behind. The officers in front of the hotel were ordered to advance on the crowd and use their batons on anyone who would not move. At the same time, the police in back of the demonstrators were ordered to use their batons on anyone attempting to move back. For 25 bloody minutes, the police clubbed away in a shameful attempt to make sure every demonstrator got a taste of the baton. News bureaus around the country called it the worst police riot since the 1930s. Witnesses said it was a miracle nobody died at the scene. Scores were seriously injured and hospitalized. Mark was beaten on the head and face and returned home with his glasses broken and his clothes covered in blood. Carl and Elsa were also bruised and bloodied, their Quaker commitment to nonviolence severely shaken. The events of June 23rd, 1967, instantly polarized the political consciousness of Southern California. Moderate Democrats became ultra-liberals. Ultra-liberals became radicals, and radicals became communists. Shocked by the brutality, but steadfast in their patriotism, modern Republicans became conservatives. Conservatives became ultra-nationalists, and ultra-nationalists became fascists. No one, it seemed, could remain moderate or neutral. The horrifying reality of the war in Vietnam and the increasingly brutal and repressive domestic environment had a curious effect on the spiritual life of our little circle of family and friends. As the chaos escalated, so did our efforts toward self-discovery. We engaged in an almost desperate struggle to quickly gain enlightenment. We believed it would be our only avenue of escape from the coming Holocaust. Constance and I were married in November, and I simply stopped going to college. Carl and Elsa invited us to come live with them and their 4 children in the suburban college community of Irvine. Carl taught mathematics and computer science at the University of California, Irvine, and Elsa, a Vassar College graduate, was a professional midwife. We became the neighborhood's token hippies and were instantly embraced by the local liberal establishment yearning to breathe hip. By day, Constance babysat and I gave guitar lessons. By night, Carl and Elsa hosted sumptuous sit-on-the-floor banquets where we would introduce the neighbors to marijuana, Alan Watts, Ravi Shankar, and recorded Tibetan chants and electronic music. In March of 1968, we started shopping for a larger home out in the nearby canyons and forests where we could establish a private communal base. We didn't want to move too far away from Carl's job at the university. On April 4th, our plans changed. The assassination of Martin Luther King plunged us into a state of tangible paranoia. Timothy Leary was advising folks to tune in, turn on, and drop out. We were already tuned in and turned on. Nothing remained now but to drop out. The subculture grapevine was humming with tales of a utopian life in Southern Oregon. We heard of a magical place called Takilma, a tiny village on the Illinois River near the California border, where land was cheap and the valley was filled with beautiful people just like us. There was even a mysterious wizard, a French-Canadian pranic healer and follower of Yogananda, who lived in a renovated barn by the river, and he was selling property next to his. This sounded too good to ignore. Mark and Carl made an exploratory trip and determined that Takilma would be our Shangri-La. Before returning, they rented a large house for us on Waldo Road near the Takilma community. The Waldo house had electricity and indoor plumbing, and it would afford us an opportunity to wean ourselves from urban luxuries before we plunged completely into the primitive world of rural hippiedom. Our plan was to headquarter there until each couple could buy land that would be suitable for building our own cabins. On May morn, after selling nearly everything we had except guitars and books, Constance and I set out for Takilma, along with Mark, his wife Margaret, Carl, Elsa, their 4 children, and 13 cats. We hope to build our own homes and live quiet lives of fasting, meditation, and study. There we intended to achieve perfect illumination before the world blew apart. And that's the end of chapter 7. I hope to see you all here tomorrow, 10 o'clock Pacific time. Hope you enjoyed this. Go on with your day. Be good to each other. Be good to yourself. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.